On December 9th, the eve of International Human Rights Day, delegates from all over the country convened in Vancouver, Washington, for the launch of the International Coalition for Human Rights in the Philippines US chapter. It is part of a global network of organizations outside the Philippines, concerned about the human rights situation in the Philippines and committed to campaign for just and lasting peace in the country.
And we are really excited to host the launch of ICHRP US. And we see every day that the situation in the Philippines is getting worse. There's killing after killing after killing, and no signs of change from the Duterte regime supported by Trump. And as people within the US, we know our tax dollars are going directly to that aid. And so alongside the Filipino people and the victims and those rising up against tyranny, we want to join them in solidarity.
At a time when the attacks on the Filipino people are heightened and intensified, ICHRP is here to advance and uphold the human rights and collective rights of the Filipino people.
President Rodrigo Duterte's war on drugs has claimed 13,000 victims. This sudden and relentless onslaught of killings and other reprehensible means of political repression is nothing new in Filipino history. Like his predecessors, Ferdinand Marcos, Gloria Arroyo, and Noynoy Aquino, President Duterte continues the killings of community organizers, social justice advocates, journalists, and faith-based leaders. Then, as it is now, these killings and political repression reflect a U.S.-backed regime hell-bent in protecting the socio-economic status quo by eliminating, with impunity, those actively opposed to it. Duterte's abrupt cancellation of the peace talks and declaration of activists and revolutionary forces as terrorists also foreshadow the return of a fascist dictatorship akin to that of Ferdinand Marcos's martial law just decades ago.
I have come over here to join the ICHRP US as they organize in solidarity and accompaniment with our people in the Philippines. We face a lot of human rights violations, especially in this war, so-called war on drugs. And with the recent pronouncement of our president putting the Communist Party of the Philippines and the New People's Army as terrorists organization, there has been a spike in the killings recently, and so this opportunity for us to be able to get in touch with people here in the U.S. and invite them to walk with us in our struggles is indeed an opportunity that we need to take advantage of, and we are thankful that the organizations that have joined in this meeting today have committed themselves to do precisely that.
Important to be here at the launching of ICHRP US, to live our faith out in action, to answer the cries of the Filipino people for true solidarity in this time as the human rights situation is worsening and the attacks not only against the peasants and the farmers, but also the people of faith and the priests are heightening. And so living life into our United Methodist resolution that calls for the resumption of the peace talks, we stand in solidarity with the Filipino people, offering not only our prayers but our actions here to call for the end of U.S. military aid to the Philippines, and to invest more in the situation of people here in the U.S. and to let the Philippine peace process continue unabated and openly supported by our government.
These times call for the deepest solidarity with the Filipino people and the broadest opposition to stop the killings, end U.S. military aid, and to prevent another fascist dictatorship in the Philippines. International Coalition for Human Rights US, or ICHRP US, aims to inform the international community about the grave human rights situation in the Philippines today.
We're here at the historic launching of the ICHRP US chapter. We're so excited to be here because the movement to uphold human rights in the Philippines is more important than ever. I just returned from our annual peace mission, and we joined in the ICHRP International Fact-Finding and Solidarity Mission as well. And I have to say that in the past 17 years that I've been going to the Philippines and doing missions and exposures, there was a qualitative difference in the level of repression in the Philippines. Every day, you're hearing about more and more killings and other kinds of human rights violations being committed against the people, the broad masses. It's the war on the poor, the war on the moral people, and the war on the revolutionary movement. We experienced it firsthand while we were there, everything ranging from harassment of the communities we visited to intimidation of the leaders and organizers, to hearing about raids on offices, all the way to hearing about new people being arrested on trumped-up charges. As soon as we arrived back home in the United States, there was also an escalation in the killings of unarmed activists, leaders, and just people who are fighting against the status quo in the Philippines. The importance of organizing more people in the U.S. to be in solidarity with the Filipino people can't be overstated. When we were in the Philippines, the people were very clear on what they wanted us to say when we came back to the U.S. and what they wanted us to do. One, they wanted us to tell other people that the U.S. government is culpable and in cahoots with the Duterte regime in committing these gross violations of human rights. And they wanted us to get people to do something about it, get us to stop our government from aiding and abetting the Duterte bloodbath that is happening right now. And so with this historic gathering, we're actually showing that there's a movement building in the U.S., a movement for human rights, a movement for supporting the Filipino people's right to self-determination, and that the movement is only going to grow larger from here. So I'm really happy to be here. Bind USA is going to continue to be a strong an active member of ICHRP US.
Join all of the groups that are forming ICHRP US. We've been working for more than a decade now on the issues of rights and welfare of Filipinos in the US, immigrant rights, workers' rights, trafficking. But we also worked on issues in the Philippines, typhoon relief, rehabilitation work. We've done several solidarity relief medical missions to the Philippines. We've adopted communities in the Philippines, donated a lot of resources, and built projects, water projects, sanitation projects, health community projects over there. And what we found along the way is there's actually still a lot of human rights violations that are related to the work that we've been doing and the communities that we've been serving and partnering with. So the recent increase in human rights violations, especially under the Duterte regime, are just expanding. Recently, the meeting with Trump and how U.S. tax dollars are fueling kind of the human rights violations of Duterte in the Philippines. So we're joining all of the groups that we've been working with over the years, but a lot of new organizations here joining ICHRP US. So we're glad to be a part of this and to push forward our work so that we can actually expand more of the link between Filipinos here in the U.S. and other communities supporting our communities back home in the Philippines.
The coalition calls for Stop the Killings, Never Again to Fascist Dictatorship in the Philippines. Solidarity is our duty. The U.S. Duterte government should be constantly reminded of what the people have achieved in history, that against the plethora of violence, deception, and empty words lay the unwavering strength of the people in defending and upholding human and people's rights. It is in the strength and perseverance of the people, through their organizations and militant actions, that we remain confident that united we will overcome the state terror, puppetry, and anti-people character of any U.S.-backed regime, including that of Rodrigo Duterte.
We are here at the ICHRP Assembly and Launch because we as an organization of lawyers, law students, legal workers, and jailhouse lawyers have been around since the 1930s, and our mission has always been to do legal work to support people's movements so that human rights are regarded over property rights. And for decades, we have been supporting the Philippine movement, and our support of that movement is unwavering today, especially as the human rights crisis in the Philippines under the Duterte regime is worsening. And as US-based attorneys and human rights lawyers and human rights activists in the legal community, it is our responsibility to hold leaders of countries and elected officials accountable for the grave human rights violations that they are responsible for committing, and fighting for a world where human rights are upheld and the law is in the service of the people.
As we pay tribute to the millions of martyrs and heroes of the Filipino people's movement, from the heroic struggles against the country's colonizers to the present neo-colonial aggressors, we remain confident in the commitment of the people to genuine national freedom, democracy, just and lasting peace.